President Trump is back in Washington this morning from the Middle East after signing off on the peace plan to put an end to the Israel-Hamas war. The historic deal earning Trump praise from all sides, including some of his most vocal critics.
Look, I don't think that we should hold in credit where it's due, and I commend the people who have been a part of this process. I'd commend the Qataris, the Egyptians, and the president.
It's a really significant first step, and I really commend President Trump and his administration, as well as Arab leaders in the region.
Here to react is former counselor to President Trump and Fox News contributor Kellyanne Conway. So there's a lot of minimizing going on there, but at least they cough out the name. Should we take that as a victory?
They do. And thanks, Charlie, for having me. I noticed on Twitter a lot of our Democratic elected officials are commending what happened yesterday, but they're leaving out the word Trump. You know, it's been several years, Charlie, since Twitter went from 140 characters to 280. They can put five more letters in there, but they just can't. And look, I think the real question yesterday was Barack Obama trying to get in on this. He actually accepted in the war, but it's Trump who achieved peace. And Obama is sort of crediting Trump for doing this, but all the while chastising his party for not maybe being a little more congratulatory of President Trump was fascinating, too. Look, Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, Barack Obama, that's great because they were part of the problem, not the solution here. This is a 3,000-year war. That massacre that happened was 2 years ago. So it was smack in the middle of the the Biden-Harris years. Right. And it took Trump, who's one of one, to do this. But, Charlie, I want people to remember, President Trump laid the groundwork in his first term for all of this. In the first year, he kept the promise of 7 presidents, Republican and Democrat, to move the embassy to Jerusalem and to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, return the Golan Heights, started the Abraham Accords, took out Soleimani, and started to have relationships with those Arab states. This is key. And you saw never President Clinton, the former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton commend this yesterday when she said she'd like to talk about those leaders too. It's President Trump who tried to soften those relationships, taking out Soleimani and saying, listen, you're no longer going to harbor and mollify these terrorists like Hamas and Hezbollah in your countries. Instead, you're going to come to the negotiating table. If I were President Xi of China and Putin of Russia, I'd queue up and get in line to do the next deals with Donald Trump.
Yeah, the key to President Trump is appealing to people's self-interest, and he's always very wise about that. And even your greatest enemies, even if it's Hamas. You mentioned President Obama. He is back to lecturing. I want to play a clip for you and get your response to it.
What I saw and I think this was a fault of some progressive language, was almost asserting a holier-than-thou superiority that's not that different from what we used to joke about coming from, the right and the moral majority and, our way, and a certain fundamentalism about how to think about stuff that I think was dangerous.
So Obama is now lecturing us about not being holier than thou.
I want everybody to roll the tape in 2022, but particularly, Charlie, in 2024, when it was Obama out there wagging his finger, scolding and shaming and screaming sometimes from his bully pulpit, demanding that people listen to him and vote for Kamala Harris or Joe Biden or Senate candidate X. And by the way, a lot of folks didn't listen to him, particularly young African-American and Hispanic men who voted for him overwhelmingly. They didn't listen to him. They rejected that because they have more connective tissue with Donald Trump and his agenda. And so I think, look, I wouldn't say he's slouching. I think Obama is not slouching to irrelevance yet, but certainly toward annoyance. And for him to call other people scolds after that's exactly what he did is pretty rich.
Exactly.
By the way, in that same interview, he gave a shout out to the companies and the universities who are not capitulating and negotiating with the Trump administration. He told them to stay firm. And last point, he basically did not renounce his position on men and women's sports in that same interview with a non-funny comedian. What he did was he said, We just needed to message it better. We needed to communicate it better. So I think some of the original sins, like defund the police and men and women's sports, that started with Obama. But I don't know. His political track record, his crystal ball has been pretty murky recently.
Murky at best. Kellyanne Conway, thank you so much.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.